Thank you very much for inviting me and being in this rather splendid department where 45 years ago I sought a job but didn't get it. So it's nice at least to be invited back as one of your failures. And of course the great place where my hero Brian Simons wrote his magnificent Histories of Education. This is it is a great school of education. And I, particularly because we were also celebrating Alison's new book, and it starts off with a quote, the field of education or leadership in England is seriously ill and could be terminal. So, you know, pay attention. I don't know whether, because it's properly terminal, that I've been brought in as some sort of medical assistance in the dying, or trying to keep it alive. But if so, that's not very wise. Because I remember when I got the job in Oxford, the head of the education department in Oxford, 21 years ago, that we were after about a year, I was visited by HMI, who come and inspect everything now. They inspected, they had this interview, and they said, now we want to know about your system of management of the department. Well, I found this very puzzling because there was no system of management. In fact, the word management had never crossed my lips. But I couldn't say that, so I thought for a bit. I said, well, we have regular meetings, I said, in the Rose and Crown after work. And that happened to went down quite well, because in the HMI report it said, we like the light management touch at the School of Education in Oxford. So anyway, if it is ill, as was said in the beginning of Alison's new book, then I think it is because there is a confusion between management and leadership. And it's that I really want to spend a little bit of time on. In doing so, I make 3 points. First of all, one of the real differences is at the heart of education, and I want to argue this, and the heart therefore of leadership is basically the ethical dimension to education and also to educational research. Unless one sees education being intrinsically an ethical term, and that education is deeply concerned with moral development, then let us see that, then the sort of research which we'll be doing, and which is often done as though it's purely an empirical matter, is not really educational research. Effectiveness is not enough. Secondly, I want to talk therefore, what are the consequences of that for teaching as a profession, and for indeed educational research into teaching. And thirdly, the further implications of this is about the provision of education, and that at the present moment in this country is a matter of real concern. So really then, just talking about the ethical dimension of education. Richard Peters, way back in 1965, likened the concept of education, or to educate, rather like to reform. If you're talking about reforming somebody or reforming a society, it means that you're doing something which is going to improve it, to make it a better society, to make it a better person. That sort of is intrinsic to the logic of the word reform. And he says, when we talk about educating people, that is similar to reform. By saying you're educating people is you're doing something to those people that is likely to lead to them being better people, improved in some sort of way. And therefore, right at the very heart of talking about educational system, educating people, is that thing about we're improving them in some way. And that therefore takes you into the realm of ethics. What counts as improving people? And these ethical issues permeate our whole understanding of education. And therefore, our whole understanding of educational research. How can you call it educational research unless you see values, what it is to improve people, to make them better, at the very heart of thinking about what we are doing and what we are researching, and how we understand that research. Now this is very, very rarely asked. Amazingly, you can go through all the government documents, 14 to 19, which I had to do, of course, for the 6 years I spent on reviewing 14 to 19 education and training. And there's hardly any real debate about the educational values that underpin it. Oh yes, in 2004 white paper, Education and Training 14 to 19, the government says what really education is about is helping all young people to realise their potential. And you get heads nodding wisely at this particular remark. But hold on. One of my many now grandchildren, Isaac, when he was 5, managed to take my handkerchief from my pocket without my knowing it, put it down the lavatory, and we weren't able to use the whole lavatory system in our apartment thereafter until it was repaired. Isaac has a certain potential to be a good, artful dodger. Here's a pickpocket in the making. Do I really want him to realise his potential? If you read the newspapers, you realise there is as much potential for doing awful things, for evil, as there is for good. And therefore, just to say we're helping all young people to realise their potential is really dodging the ethical issues. What are the sort of potentials that we want young children to realise? And what are the kind of cultural resources which we as teachers need to draw on in order to enable those good aspects of what it is to be human, to be sort of realised? And so we started our Nuffield review with the question, what counts as an educated 19-year-old in this day and age? What are the qualities? What are the values? What are the sort of people that we want to emerge from our educational system? And these are fundamentally ethical questions about what it is to be human, to use Gerard Bruner's thing, what is it that makes us human? How did we become so? How can we become more so? And Bruner saw that to be the centre of our educational enterprise. And unless we do ask that sort of question, it affects what you mean by quality of learning, and hence research into learning. It affects what counts as good assessment of young people, and therefore research into assessment. It affects also the whole question of whether we believe that practical capabilities, which has really been absolutely omitted from the education experience now of so many young people in this country, whether that's important or not depends upon what counts as an educated person in this day and age. So that's what we thought we would start with. So a lot of our report at the beginning, first 2 chapters, really explores this. We said, well, what we're educating? We're educating, once again back to Bruce, to help young people to develop their humanity. What constitutes being a human person? What are the things that enable these young people to grow as persons? What are the qualities? What is it to be human? What is it to be a person? And so obviously, we stressed knowledge, understanding, being able to think, being able to reason, being able to question, and so on. Fairly obvious. What philosopher John Dewey referred to as the intelligent management of mind. I think that's rather important. Because often, go back to the Crowther report 50 years ago, go back to the Newsom report 64, is it? That's right. Which referred to half our future. And if we're talking about all young people, we're not just talking about those people who are going to be academically very able. Those people are going to go to university. We're talking about all young people, those with special needs and so on. Now, they may be limited in terms of their capacity to know and to understand, to do the